What is up? It's the Daily Betslip for Wednesday, April 27th. I had to look down for a second, Peter, because occasionally you practice it in your mind and you're like, all right, this is the date. This is when we're talking about things. And then sometimes, in my old age, it tends to vanish. But Peter Dewey, Ben Heisler, good to have you guys with us. Plenty of good stuff on the show today. We will go over your pick for our game of the night. We'll have to go and break down some of our picks as well. Our best bets coming up in about 6-7 minutes or so. Of course, the bad beat from last night. There were two, Peter, that you kind of just have to laugh and chuckle to yourself that I can't believe I actually saw that. One of them felt like it was in a Little League game, but we'll get to that in just a second, as well as special guest Matt Verderame, the NFL insider over at FanSided, is going to join us at 25 past the hour today. Go over some NFL draft prop information, take basically where we're thinking about heading with our draft picks. And we did a full show, which you can find right here on YouTube if you're watching there. If you are watching at BetSided, definitely go ahead and make sure you go ahead and just search BetSided over on YouTube. You can go ahead and subscribe there, find all of our videos that are posted. But Matt's going to join us at 5:25 to give his perspective on where we're headed with our draft picks, and try and see if maybe we're all on the same page, if we're maybe following the money a little bit. But a lot to get into, Peter, on the show tonight. And I feel like this is ideal considering that the NBA slate, not so fun tonight.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing. We only got 2 games tonight, and they're both game 5s with the other team up 3-1. So not the greatest NBA games, but we got some star power. Still got Giannis, still got DeRozan, Steph Curry, Jokic. Like, there's still plenty of fun players to watch, but in terms of the quality of games, especially with where the lines are at Win right now, you're not expecting any barn burners tonight. I will say that.
No, right now we're looking at some lines that aren't particularly pretty in the NBA. You have the Bucks as 12.5-point favorites against the Bulls. Bulls are going to be without Zach LaVine and Alex Caruso, so one of their best offensive players, arguably their best defensive player as well. He's going to be out. Milwaukee with the 3-1 series lead, and then -8.5 Golden State against Denver, which I have a feeling, just a slight feeling, it might be a little bit more intriguing than bettors might anticipate. But we'll get into that in our game of the night coming up in about 35 minutes or so from now. Can we talk about just like we've talked about bad beats. We always lead off the show, Pete, with our favorite or most gut-wrenching bad beats of the night. And for anybody that watched the end of the Detroit-Minnesota game in Major League Baseball last night, you got yourself one of the more fun and bizarre ways to lose a baseball game that I think we've seen in quite some time. So Tigers are up in this game. They're up 4-3. They just taken the lead in the top of the 8th inning, scoring 3 on Minnesota, and then watching it all unfold in about a Little League fashion was comical. You can watch the video. It's at BetSided on Twitter. We found it from Major League Baseball and credited to them. But have you ever watched so many bad Little League plays all at once, not only take out a winning bet for the Tigers as an underdog in that game, but watch Minnesota just find the most bizarre way to win? You're not going to find anything like that.
Yeah, it was wild. You go from a drop ball in the outfield, it was a tough play, like it was a leaping play, to Minnesota kind of poor base running because of the drop ball. Everybody had to kind of hold up, and then you get a throw by the catcher. Just I don't even know, man. Just into left field, like it wasn't even close to throwing the ball to anybody, and 2-run score. Just a horrible way. If you were on the Tigers, just a horrible way to lose a bet, honestly.
Yeah, and if you're the Twins right now, like I saw an article and a conversation I think Mark Harmon and Robert Murray over on FanSided were having, that like, are the Twins back? Well, when you win games like that, yeah, maybe you're back. They're in first place in the American League Central as everybody on Chicago is finding a way to get hurt. And Tony La Russa in charge there, not necessarily in control. But man, if all of a sudden Minnesota is starting to win games like that, maybe they are a threat in the AL Central. It's pretty remarkable to watch how that's gone down. The other one came in the NHL last night. The Nashville Predators. They were up in this game, up 4-3 against the Calgary Flames at home. So imagine being a Predators better. You got them at home, money line plus 115, nice little underdog at home. Calgary ties the game at 4 with 0.1 seconds left on the clock. So that goes into overtime. They then lose in overtime. The money line bet is officially kaput. You are done, all because of 0.1 seconds left on the clock. How does that happen, Peter?
Yeah. It was wild too because the sequence at the end, there was a bunch of shots on net, and they finally got one. And it's just unfortunate because at the end of those games in a 1-goal game, they're gonna have the extra man because they pull a goalie. So it's just gonna be like, can you hold up defensively? They held up for all but 0.1 seconds of it, which is just it's brutal. I mean, that's why it's a bad beat though. That's just terrible luck.
And by the way, shout out to our own Ian McMillan, who he said he was on the right side
Yeah.
of that NHL play. So yes, listen, for all the times that Ian has tempted the gambling gods and gambler over the course of his Twitter feed throughout the course of many years together, I'm glad he finally got one because that was starting to press a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, he needed that one. He's tempted the Twitter gods too many times where I think he wants it to blow up in his face because it's fantastic content. But that time it was nice to see him on the right side of one.
Exactly. No tattoos in play, at least this time around. So credit to Ian for the win. For anybody that had a bad beat, certainly last night, let us know in the chat. You can reach out with some of your favorite bets of the night as well right here on YouTube. Again, if you're watching the stream, at BetSided on Twitter. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Definitely do encourage you guys if you want to weigh in and get involved with the conversation. We had a lot of fun the last couple of days answering some of your favorite betting questions of the night, going over some games and matchups and props that you're interested in. You can find those right on YouTube. Just search BetSided in YouTube. You can go ahead and subscribe, and everything will load up right there for you to be able to chat along with us and hang out in real time. Let's get into some of our best bets of the night, but I want to shout out somebody who's has been a loyal supporter of BetSided, and that's our guy Cody Wells on Twitter. We were asking for some of your best bets of the night, and Cody's came through. And of course, for anybody that remembers Cody, he was one of the contestants on BetU. Came so close to winning that final prize, but just a couple bad beats for him along the way as well. Cody's going with the Padres tonight, Peter, on the run line, -1.5 at -110 odds against the Cincinnati Reds. Mentions that Cincinnati is 1-12 in their last 13 games, with all 12 losses coming by 2+ runs. It's kind of the flip side. I know that Ian wrote about the Dodgers earlier this week, that the Dodgers in every game this year have covered on the run line. They're the best run line team in Major League Baseball. Coincidentally, the Reds might be the worst. So if you can get the Padres basically near or around even money against a team that has looked awful the way that Cincinnati has, certainly on the road, the way that the Padres are swinging the bat, certainly like that play from Cody tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, the Reds are just terrible. They gave up everybody this offseason. They traded Sonny Gray. They traded Eugenio Suarez. They traded Jesse Winker. They're not trying to win games. So I'm all for fading them in this spot. And like you said, get -110 odds on that. I feel like it should be even worse with how bad they've been playing. So, some of these trends early in the season, and Ian and I kind of talked about this on Monday on Daily Betslip, is you sometimes just got to ride it out at the start of the year. Some of the trends would be oh yeah, well, it was back at the beginning of the season they did at this point when we don't have as much data to go off of, might as well ride the trend. If they stink this bad, go for it. I might be fading the Reds the entire season, honestly, once we really dive into the middle of the baseball season, because just you look at that roster, I mean, it's terrible. They're actively trying to lose. We talk about that sometimes in the NBA with teams towards the end of the year. The Reds are actively trying to lose. They do not care. So fading them and making a little money off of it too.
The Reds have the worst record in all of Major League Baseball at 3-14 this year. Worse than the Orioles, worse than the Athletics, which is supposed to be another team that was purposely trying to lose. The Nationals have looked atrocious, but certainly not that bad. Arizona, sorry, Joanne, the Diamondbacks have been struggling over the course of this year as well. Yet they still have a higher chance to make the playoffs via Fangraphs at 0.9% than the team that's 8-9 in their own division, the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Reds are still projected to win 70 games. Pittsburgh is only projected to win 69. So just when you think it can be worse for the Reds, hasn't quite gotten there yet. 3-14 on the year. They're 7.5 games back in a pretty bad NL Central division. So Reds fans, you got a chance. Maybe you have an opportunity to turn things around, but 0.9% right now to make the postseason is Cincinnati.
I was going to say, is that the worst division in baseball? I know your Cubs are kind of going through a little bit of a rebuild. So like that, I mean, the Brewers and the Cardinals are fine, but that division's kind of rough. They got two of the worst teams in the Pirates and the Reds.
AL Central might be that division.
Yeah, that's true.
You have the Twins a game above 500, but they're only projected to win about 83 games this year. I think Vegas set the total over at WinBet at 83.5 or 84.5.
Yeah.
So the White Sox were supposed to run away with the division, but they can't stay healthy. They're kind of a mess right now. I think they got in the win column a little bit earlier on today. Did the Chicago White Sox, but they ended up beating the Royals 7-3. So maybe they start to figure it out. Maybe they get some guys healthy. I think Lance Lynn's missing the first 2 months of the season. A lot of concern, but I would probably say that would be the worst division in baseball. I do want to stay with the NL Central, though. Let me give you my first best bet of the day as we dive into our 3 favorite bets of the night. I will start with one game in Major League Baseball. We'll throw it over to Peter for his MLB pick of the day. I got one more on the Major League side, and then we will switch things over to the NBA. I got a player prop for you. Remember Andy Ashby, longtime pitcher in the league?
I do not, honestly. That's
all right. Well,
wow.
He's got a family member in Aaron Ashby who pitches for the Milwaukee Brewers, and his player prop tonight is only set at 4 strikeouts at -125 against the Pittsburgh Pirates. He entered the season as their number 1 prospect, was a top 50 prospect in baseball. Really good fastball slider combination from the left-hand side. And he's only making his 2nd start of the year. It's going to be his 6th game, but he's actually reached this number of 4 strikeouts in his last 2 appearances. And he strikes out just under 10.5 players per 9 innings. You have the Pirates, coincidentally, a bottom 10 strikeout percentage team. And it feels like a very ideal matchup for a team that hasn't faced an electric left-hander. Pittsburgh struggled against lefties so far over the course of the year. Mentioned bottom 10 in strikeout percentage. I know that he hasn't gone deep into games, but for a lot of players this year, the strikeout numbers continue to climb. The home runs are down. I think he can get over this number against a team that just does not make consistent contact at the plate. Aaron Ashby over 4 strikeouts at -125 against the Pirates.
I like it. I love strikeout props. Speaking of strikeout props, if we want to jump right into mine. So Joanne's not going to like me. She may not even queue up this graphic because I've bet against the Diamondbacks twice on Daily Betslip this week. We've had 3 episodes, and I've had 2 bets against the Diamondbacks. I'm taking Julio Urias over 4.5 strikeouts. It's a little juice, -165 against the Diamondbacks tonight. But the D-backs, man, they're 28th in the league in strikeouts per game. They're averaging 9.5 a game. And Urias, I think we're getting a little discount on this number because his first start of the season against the Rockies was really bad. He kind of got roughed up, only went 2 innings, didn't strike out a batter. But his next 2 starts, he's gone 10 innings, allowed just 3 hits and 1 earned run, struck out 11. Struck out 5 and 6 guys in those 2 games. So I think, once he starts to get a little bit more stretched out, that's the only fear I have with some of these props with pitchers is like, we didn't really have a full spring training. So some of these guys haven't pitched their full innings so far. But I think Urias, if he can get through 5 innings, I think he easily punches out 5 Diamondbacks. Obviously, Walker Buehler, who I took on Monday, his prop was at 5.5. He ended up striking out 10 in a complete game shutout. So this Diamondbacks team is ripe to fade. They're not hitting the ball at all right now. And I wouldn't put them in the actively trying to lose category because they have made some free agent signings. They have some good players. Like Ketel Marte is really solid, but I think Urias is in a good spot to hit the over on this prop tonight. Yeah,
Urias is somebody that's always had electric stuff. And I remember him kind of making his mark, in the Diamondbacks for the Dodgers during the postseason. And he's always been somebody that can always rack up strikeouts. Now, he can still pitch to contact too, but it doesn't feel like a bit of a low number for this type of a matchup. It feels a little bit like a trap to me. I like the play, but I'm a bit surprised that for somebody as talented as Urias, that the number is only 4.5 tonight.
Yeah, I would if the odds weren't as like it's really juiced, so that's why I was like, maybe it's not as much of a trap line as I think it is. They're basically banking on him getting 5 strikeouts at this point, but it was just to see him at 4.5. I was like, I have to take it. Like, there's you're just rarely going to see him that low, especially as the season progresses.
One other one that I like in Major League Baseball. Actually, I lied. Not only do I have one, but I have two. Tampa Bay on the money line tonight is an area that I'm going to. They just got smoked by a guy that I don't know if listen. Peter, I don't get to toot my horn that often because I've been wrong quite a bit, and I certainly like to try and own it. But did you see the start last night from Logan Gilbert of the Seattle Mariners?
Listen, man, you called that one pretty well. He's looked real good to start this year.
Mariners tweeted out some of his stats over the course of this year through the month of April. He's likely on his way to winning American League Pitcher of the Month. Logan Gilbert so far 0.40 ERA. He's given up 1 earned run in 22.1 innings pitched. That leads the major leagues. It's 1 month. Obviously a very small sample, but I've seen his odds go from 70 to 1, which is where I got him at the beginning of the season, down to 20 to 1 to win the American League Cy Young. And so I bring this up, not necessarily that one has something to do with the other, but I do think Tampa Bay gets themselves back out in front. It's a much better matchup tonight. I know that Marco Gonzalez has been halfway decent for them, but it's soft tossing lefty compared to the flamethrower and Gilbert from the right side. Still giving up, a hard hit percentage in the high 30% this year. Gonzalez has been known to give up some long balls along the way, and you have guys on Tampa Bay that are really set up to hit him well. Wander Franco right now with an expected weighted on base average, which is a great metric for anybody that's trying to take collective information altogether. I think it's much better than batting average, much better than on base percentage. And right now, league average is about 320 for an expected weighted on base, which you would see as ex WOBA, right? So his is at 453. That's a ton. All right.
That's crazy.
I think the rest of their lineup, they've got guys that are just trying to get themselves going. Harold Ramirez, 0.381. Taylor Wells, 0.381. Basically, all these guys are way above average in expected on base average, but they just haven't gotten there yet. And so now you're not chasing after Gilbert, whose stuff is vanishing. You're trying to fix it against soft contact against Marco Gonzalez. I think they batter him. I think Marco Gonzalez gets fried tonight. And I do like Tampa Bay. I probably will even consider them as a run line play as well. But knowing that it's halfway decent value on the money line tonight, I do think Tampa Bay in play at minus 137. If you want to get them on the run line at WinBet, they are minus 1.5 plus 145. Are you surprised that the Rays have kind of been a little bit up and down so far this year?
Yeah, they've been kind of middling this year, which is weird. I feel like they'll turn it on though. That's this kind of way that this team is. Like every single season, they have these guys that come out of nowhere and have a big year for them. They're not going to, wow you with star talent. But honestly, the Mariners, I think the bigger story, how well they've played. I had put in like our season previews, they had a chance to win the AL West. I really genuinely think that's possible. They have a lot of young talent on that team, but I kind of like this play. I feel like the Mariners have been really hot. And like Gonzalez is probably the one pitcher I would fade if I was betting against the Mariners. So I like this play quite a bit.
All right, one other MLB bet that I have, if I'm looking at an underdog tonight, did not go well for me last night taking the Orioles against your Yankees, but I think I'm going to go back to the well. I think I'm going to go back to the well because I'm not sure how much I trust Jordan Montgomery. Better in the last start. In fact, he's only given up 4 earned runs over the course of the year, but he's done it. The start that he really struggled with was against the Red Sox. But the last 2 times he's gone up against Baltimore and against Detroit, Orioles get a second look at him. There's plus, I believe, 225 on the money line tonight. I like them as a run line team, especially because Baltimore has lost a ton of 1-run games. In fact, they're the 4th best run line team in the majors. Do you have enough confidence in Jordan Montgomery to go against this side and take the Yankees on the run line instead?
I don't have enough confidence in the Yankees offense after scoring 12 runs last night. I feel like this is like they're due for a clunker where it's going to be like, oh, they scored 2 runs. I mean, the Orioles like shut them out twice earlier this year, but I will say this, if the Yankees bats, like if the last like 4 or 5 games when they've really been hitting the ball well, if that's not just like a fluke, and that's like obviously going to regress, but if like they can actually like string together some good at bats at the beginning of the year, it was like they got like 1 or 2 big hits, and that was like carrying them to like close wins. If like Anthony Rizzo is going to have this kind of year, I know that's your guy, and then they get Stanton back on track and Judge keeps hitting, like this lineup is very scary. But at the same time, just being a Yankees fan and what they've done the last couple of years, it just feels like this is like a huge letdown spot for them. So I don't hate taking the Orioles. I'm not bold enough to take the Orioles, but I'll probably just stay away from this game, honestly.
Really quick note before we dive into your two favorite best bets in the NBA tonight. And again, Matt Verderame is joining us coming up in about 4 or 5 minutes or so here on the show today to dive into some of the more pressing questions regarding the NFL draft and some of our NFL draft props. And make sure you guys stick around for Verderame coming up in the next 4 or 5 minutes or so. The Orioles starting pitcher, Tyler Wells, the overall numbers don't look particularly good. He's 0-2 with a 6.75 ERA, 3 games started, only 8 innings pitched. He has been incredibly unlucky this year. If you actually look over some of his advanced numbers, his fielder independent pitching, which takes into consideration, balls in play that should have been caught, that should have been handled. It's a better indication as opposed to ERA. His ERA is 6.75. His FIP is 1.99. The guy's been incredibly unlucky over the course of the year. At some point, there's going to be some regression on the positive side for Wells. I think now's as good of a chance against the Yankees as a big underdog, knowing that he's only limited opponent's batting average to 125 this year. So he's just been one of the more unlucky pitchers in the league. I think there's a nice opportunity for Baltimore as an underdog. What about for you, Peter? I know you got 2 plays, best bets in the NBA tonight, 1 player prop and 1 game. So who do you like first?
Yeah, the first one I took earlier today, I took the Bucks -12 against the Muir Bulls tonight. It's now 12.5 at WinBet, but I still kind of like it at that number. This isn't, the Bulls just are going to be extremely shorthanded. They don't have Zach LaVine because of COVID. They don't have Alex Caruso because of concussion. And they lost the last 2 games of this series by 30 and 24 points at home. So now they're going to go on the road, and the Bucks are only laying 12 points. I think this is another blowout for Milwaukee. I think they try and get this series over with. They're going to have a tough matchup with Boston coming up, who swept the Nets. And obviously now the Celtics are going to be well rested. So I'm sure Milwaukee wants to get as much rest as it possibly can before starting up that series. So I like the Bucks here. I think the biggest thing that I took into account is game 1 of this series, the Bucks closed at -10.5. That was with LaVine and Caruso in the lineup. Now, neither one of them is in the lineup, and they're only 1.5 point more. I just can't get to that. Zach LaVine's too important to this team, and Caruso's been probably the best defender they've been able to throw at Giannis. So I think this one is a pretty easy play for me to go with the Bucks. I think they roll pretty easily tonight.
Yeah, I was going to just say really quickly, it's hard to go in another direction there. They've been so dominant. Only thing I would say maybe on the other side is that Chicago has played Milwaukee tough in the first 2 games in Milwaukee. I don't know whether that makes a difference or not. I don't think it does, considering the guys that they're missing. I think Chicago is done mentally and physically, and I think Milwaukee's ready to move on. So hard to disagree, even with the double-digit spread.
Yeah, no, that's my thinking too. So then the last bet I got, best bet before we get into Matt, and then game of the night, obviously later. Got Bones Highland over 1.5 3-pointers for the Nuggets against the Warriors tonight. It's -135. I love this prop for Bones. He's been a volume monster from 3 all season long, but especially over his last 10 games, he's hit this number in 7 of his last 10. The only game he didn't hit it in this series was in game 3. He only played 14 minutes. But then obviously he hit 3 threes in game 4. Was one of the driving forces with 15 points for why they even won that game and forced a game 5. So I think Mike Malone's going to have to go to him a little bit more. They need to find somebody else who's going to score around Nikola Jokic. And the thing with Highland is the volume is there. He's going to take 3 or more threes basically guaranteed in this game. So I love getting him over 1.5. They're going to have to try and keep up offensively with the 3 ball. So I expect him, Monty Morris, Will Barton. They're probably going to be guys you want to target at 3 props, but I like Highland the best in this spot.
Yeah, and he's also hit that prop in 3 of the 4 games so far.
Yes.
over the course of the series. So yeah, love those plays on the NBA side. Always encourage you guys to weigh in with some of your favorite NBA thoughts as well. And we will get back to the NBA coming up in just a minute. But let's bring on our guy Matt Verderame, the national NFL insider over at BetSided. He's also the co-host of Stacking the Box, which I have the privilege of joining every Tuesday. You can find that show live at BetSided over at noon Eastern, 11 Central. Matt, what's good, man? Happy eve to the NFL draft for you. How you doing?
I'm doing well, guys. How are you?
We're good. We're good. So I want to start things off by seeing whether or not you're in the consensus with sort of everybody else as far as leading off the draft. Because right now over at WinBet, you try to look at Trayvon Walker. He's the consensus number one at minus 350, way above Aiden Hutchinson. But Hutchinson comes in consensus number two. He's minus 300 to Detroit. What would have to happen for either Jacksonville or Detroit to basically say, you know what, that's not the direction we're leaning in. We're going to go ahead and zig when everybody else thinks we're going to zag? What would have to happen?
Trent Baalke is Trent Baalke at about 7 o'clock Eastern, about an hour before the draft, and just decides, I'm going in another direction, which is completely possible. But I would be really surprised. When you start to hear a little bit of smoke, okay, fine. You start to hear this much smoke, then it seems like, okay, there's probably a reason for it. And the odds have followed. I think it will be Walker. And Hutchinson at 2 seems like a slam dunk. If he's there, I can't imagine the Lions are going to pass up a Michigan man who fits everything Dan Campbell wants. They have so many needs. Edge is right there at the top among them. So I think it will be Walker. I think it will be Hutchinson. Really, for me, the intrigue starts at 3 with Houston. You've heard a lot of Derek Stingley talk. Would they actually take Derek Stingley at 3? That would be a surprise based off of where everything was a week ago, but it seems like that has ramped up considerably in the last 48 hours.
To go back to the number one, we had our little mock draft show earlier today, and two of our guys, Ian McMillan and Reed Wallach, they think there's a shot that Ike Okongwu goes number one because that's who Doug Peterson's kind of thought. Do you think there's any chance Peterson can kind of outrule Baalke here, or are they just going to side with Baalke since Shad Khan kind of has been, that's his guy basically?
It's always possible. But would I be surprised? Yeah, I'd be surprised. I think in the end, Baalke's a guy, he's going to make those decisions. I think he and Harbaugh in San Francisco, they clashed largely because of how strong the personalities are. And that maybe that happens with Doug Peterson as well. The other side of this too is they just signed Cam Robinson to a 3-year extension today for a lot of money. I almost wonder if that was Baalke kind of like, we're not drafting a tackle. We just paid this man $50+ million. You're going to draft. I mean, if you're drafting Okongwu in the top 5, let alone the top pick, you're drafting to play left tackle. Like, you're not bringing him in to play guard. You're not bringing him in to go play right tackle. Like, if you're Jacksonville, you have a million needs bigger than your right tackle right now. So, I'd be really surprised if that's not a defensive pick.
I look at wide receiver, Matt, as sort of the more fascinating options because I don't necessarily feel like there is a top guy. I think you can make a very substantial argument that it could be Williams over Garrett Wilson. I think Drake London, considering the type of extremely athletic build that he has, a go up and catch it type guy, can also be in that conversation. And Wilson, Williams, and London, I think that we all agree that they're in that top tier. Do you look at Wilson as the consensus number one overall wide receiver in this draft? Because that's where the odds makers have him.
I don't. I will agree with you. Like, look, you could make the case that he is. You could make the case he's the top receiver, but you could make the case for a lot of guys. You could make the case in a lot of different avenues. Hey, look, okay, it's Jameson Williams who's going to have the best career out of these guys, but he's coming off a torn ACL. It's going to be Chris Olave. Okay, well, it could be Garrett Wilson. They were teammates. Like, which one of those guys is going to end up being better? Some people think George Pickens is the most talented guy in the draft, but there's concerns about maybe who he is just off the field. Not that there's been any criminal stuff, but maybe some maturity things. So, and then there's Drake London, who had an incredible year at USC before he got hurt. So there are so many guys. Treylon Burks, another one, who is going to be, borderline top 10 pick. And he didn't run well at the combine. Now he's like 20 to 30, somewhere in there. I think anybody who says, "Oh, I definitely know who the top guy is in this draft," God bless. I couldn't tell you that. I think there are 6 to 8 guys in this draft at receiver who could all be Pro Bowl level players and could all be guys who are on 3 contracts in 5 years, and that's it.
All right. You said 6 to 8 guys that all have potential Pro Bowl upside. Do you think there's more than 6.5 guys at that wide receiver position that go in the first round? I'm leaning on the under for that one. I just feel like the tone is going to be set with those 3 guys, and it's just a matter of who wants to reach on Pickens, and that's when I think the next set of dominoes are going to fall.
That's what's hard about this is when you have that many players in a round, is there a run on them early because people are like, we got to get our guy because they're about to fall off the board? Or is it the other side of it where, well, we can wait because there's so many guys, we can snag somebody in round 2, and then all of a sudden everybody starts slotting back. I mean, 6.5 is the perfect number for me because you look at it, I think the guys who definitely are going in the first round, Jameson Williams, both the Ohio State kids. I think Treylon Burks, yeah, it's possible he gets out of the first. I don't think he's getting out of the first. I think he'll be gone. Pickens is, like you said, Ben, I mean, he's kind of the guy you look at and you're like, is he going to get out of there? I would take the under. I'm with you. I think, but I'd probably take 6. Like, I think I'd probably go there. I think you're probably, like I said, the 2 Ohio State kids, Jameson Williams, those 3 are definitely going high. And then after that, like, does the question, if you want the over, does some team shock you and go with Christian Watson,
right,
or Jahar Dotson, right, out of Penn State, where he wouldn't be a shock maybe as much as Watson, but all it takes is one team in a draft where a lot of teams, one team might have a team that's, a guy that's 15th, 16th on their board, and another team might have him 40th. So you might have a lot of that. Well, one team thought that guy was good enough. I don't know that there's a real consensus on most guys outside of the top 10, 12 picks.
Speaking of, where teams are going to have specific guys on their draft board, still not the greatest quarterback class, arguably one of the weakest quarterback classes we've seen in the last few years. But obviously, Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, they're both at the top of the odds at WinBet to be the first quarterback selected. Malik Willis is the favorite, -220. Kenny Pickett, +140 to be the first quarterback. How do you see this draft kind of shaking out for the quarterbacks? Do you think one of them goes really high, or does it kind of depend on if there's a trade or is in a need? Because it's a weird draft.
If Carolina picks at 6, I am absolutely convinced they're going to take a quarterback. They are. I know Tepper came out today and said, "Well, I know Rome wasn't built in a day." Yeah, that's fine until you're 3-11.
He also said Sam Darnold was a very good quarterback too.
He did. He was full of lies today, and that's real easy to say now when you haven't lost a game in 4 months, and you've kind of. Matt Rule's won 10 games in 2 years, and Matt Rule knows that the biggest reason they haven't won is they've had no quarterback, and. You could sit there all day long. Scott Fitter, it wasn't Scott Fitter. It was Ben McAdoo, the offensive coordinator, was like, yeah, it's Sam's job. Well, I shouldn't have said that. I probably shouldn't have said it. I mean, look, if they can get a quarterback, they're going to. Now, the question with them is they don't have second and third round picks. So do they trade back and try to accumulate more picks? I think if Carolina picks at 6, I think they're going to take a quarterback. And this is a total gut. I think they're going to take Pickett. Because even though Willis, to me, is a far better prospect, Pickett, because he played 5 years of college ball, is probably more ready to step in and be borderline competent year 1. Where I think Willis has a much higher ceiling, but he's probably going to benefit from the Trey Lance treatment, the Patrick Mahomes treatment, and man, sit a year. But Rule can't have him sit a year. Like, Atlanta is the dream spot for Willis. For me, he's from Atlanta. He could sit behind Mariota for a year. He's in an offensive system. They can do all, but I fear for whoever gets picked by Carolina as a quarterback at 6, because whoever that is, they're playing. They're playing one way or the other.
So I think you make a great point about Pickett, how they need somebody who's ready right now. He's actually the favorite to go to Carolina, but yet he's still not the favorite to be the first quarterback selected, which inference, I'm assuming that means they trade back.
Right.
But the question I have for you is, who do you think would be willing to move up to 6? Because we kind of talked about this, who is going to be in that spot where they're going to be we have to get somebody at 6? Because the way this draft is, normally you're moving up for a quarterback, I feel like. And so I wonder who would be willing to move that far.
Okay, so the math says, first of all, there's 8 teams, quarter of the league, that have multiple first-round picks. So the Chiefs and the Packers are the only 2 contenders that have multiple first-round picks. I'd be floored if either one of those teams tried to get to 6. I can't see that happening. So if you eliminate them, the Giants and Jets both have multiple top 10 picks. I mean, would one of those teams try to trade up? And the Giants are talking about trading up by a pick. I don't think that's going to happen. The Jets, no. So Houston, are they going to trade up? I mean, Houston needs 1 million guys. Like, trading up would be insane. The team that stands out to you that you go, oh, they would trade up is New Orleans. But see, and that answers the question of, would Carolina trade that pick to New Orleans? Like, can you imagine if they trade that pick and the Saints take Malik Willis and he's incredible for the next 15 years? You can't make that trade. But I think the Saints, if you look at the math of their picks, 16 and 19, if they add up both those picks and trade them, they could trade for the 5th pick, which is right ahead of Carolina, and get to the Giants. Well, the Giants, I'm sure, would take 2 extra first-round picks in a heartbeat, right? Because the Giants still pick 7th, and then they'd have 16 and 19. So I could see the Saints, who have no long-term answer quarterback, saying, well, we got to get ahead of Carolina. We got to do it. But again, do you feel that pressure if you're the Saints to do it in a class where you might be able to sit there and get Malik Willis? I think Pittsburgh's desperate for a quarterback, but again, do they have the capital to get up there? They have to trade future first. Now, maybe Colbert in his last year just says, screw it. I don't care. I'm retiring anyway, right? I mean, that is always like, he's the guy at the blackjack table who's a billionaire. He doesn't care. So, I mean, they're
house money.
Right. I mean, they never make big moves like that. That's not that franchise's nature. But maybe this year it's different because Kevin Colbert just goes, screw it. It doesn't matter. I'm leaving. So they're a team to think about.
One other one that I have for you, Matt, and appreciate you hopping on with us on Daily Betslip today. Is there like a draft play or a trade? Like, if you had to go ahead and just throw out on a night where conviction really doesn't matter because everyone's going to get everything wrong anyway, do you have a conviction play on draft night? Does Deebo Samuel get traded? Does Jordan Love or Baker Mayfield end up on a new team? Is there someone that's going to be a shock first round pick? Like, what's the one that you're banging the drum on, saying like, I genuinely believe this is going to happen, even if most may not agree with you?
I'm tempted to say that you're going to have at least 3, maybe 4 quarterbacks. And I guess with conviction being thrown out the window, that 4 quarterbacks go in the first round, even though there's no way in hell that they should. Like, Willis will and should. I don't think any of the other guys should. And yet I think Pickett's going to go 6 if Carolina is sitting there, because of position. It reminds me of the year, and I can't remember what year it is off the top of my head. It might have been I think it was 2011, where like Jake Locker got picked. It's a ridiculously early pick. And then it was, if memory serves, there were like Blaine Gabbert was picked that year. I think Christian Ponder was a top 10. It was just ridiculous. There was this obscene run, and like a lot of people had those guys rated as like the 40th best players in the draft. I think like the one team, I don't know if you could bet, you probably could, I'm sure you bet anything these days. The one thing I think you could bet, I think Tennessee, if a quarterback that they like falls to them, I think they're taking a quarterback. They remind me so much of when Kansas City had Alex Smith and they couldn't get over the hump. That loss to Cincinnati for them, you're a 1 seed. That was so painful. I could easily see a scenario like if Desmond Ritter's there or Matt Corral's there, 25, where they just say, well, look, who's got the bigger upside for us, Desmond Ritter or a D tackle, right? Like at some point, you've got to replace Ryan Tannehill, and the guy can sit for a year. Tannehill can play this year out, and then you move forward. So I don't know what the odds are on Tennessee taking a quarterback in the first round. I would throw down a flyer on that, because I think there's a real chance if the board falls a certain way that they do it.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you on Stacking the Box that WinBet announced that somebody bet $500 on Kenny Pickett going to Tennessee at 8-1, or just over 8-1. The potential payout of that bet, $37,500 for Kenny Pickett going to Tennessee in this economy, no doubt.
That would be, first of all, Kenny Pickett's not getting to 25 because some other team is going to say, hey, we can make Kenny Pickett into a Pro Bowler. And then also, look, I think Tennessee, like Ritter, Corral, You know, I can't imagine Sam Howell. I feel like that's just ridiculously high. But look, quarterbacks, if you want something wild in the draft, that position is just teams will talk themselves into it and then get up at a podium on Monday and go, he was the highest rated guy on our board, which is the biggest line of crap in the world, but they've got to say it.
Yeah, no doubt. You follow Matt, by the way, at Matt Verderame on Twitter. He's National NFL Insider for us over at BetSided. I know you guys got a ton of NFL draft stuff, especially some video stuff. I'm going to be a part of it in the later portion of the night after the Cowboys pick. I'm going to try to stay up for it with the two young kids, do my best. But looking forward to being a part of it, Matt. Anything else that you guys have coming up ahead of the NFL draft we should mention?
No, tomorrow night, 7:45 Eastern, you have an all first round, the whole deal, streaming it. Myself, Mark Harmon, it'll be on Stack in the Box. It'll be on The Windy City. It'll be on Arrowhead Addict. So if you want to watch, you can subscribe to any of those YouTube channels or all of them preferably, and watch it. And like you said, Ben, you'll be on. I know we have Ian McMillan on for a handful of picks. We have people coming on left and right. It will be an unvarnished look at the draft. It will certainly not be a bunch of, hey, this guy's great. It'll be a lot of brutal honesty. So if you want that, check out the stream.
Looking forward to it. Matt, thanks for joining us, man. Good to see you.
Hey, thanks, guys. Take it easy.
That is Matt Verderame hopping on with us here on the Daily Betslip. First guest, Peter, joining us. And I thought his perspective on Carolina and Kenny Pickett certainly caught my attention. I mean, this is the conversation. I know our Reed Wallach wrote about it today. Basically sort of indicating that, yeah, he's the favorite to go to Carolina, but just because he's the favorite and Willis is the favorite to be the first quarterback taken, you might think there's an edge. That's not always the case. But Matt highlighting that he could very well go not just to Carolina, but to Carolina at 6.
Crazy. Quarterbacks are currency, man. You draft a quarterback, Matt put it perfectly. They're going to say it's the number one guy on our board. That's our guy. We're going to have him going forward. People love quarterbacks. Doesn't matter the year. They somehow find a way to sneak a bunch into the first round.
They find a way to do so every year, like you said. And I still think it's in Carolina's best interest to try to trade down. The problem is, I don't know if there's going to be a team that's going to be a willing partner. Like draft capital for whatever reason this year, unless there is a guy that falls, right? Like, but how far can you fall if you're picking at number 6? I think Carolina, exactly. They're kind of in a very non-optimal spot here. And they might have to reach to take their next quarterback of the future. And Kenny Pickett in Carolina, good luck with that. It's not Sam Darnold, so maybe that's a positive, but
I guess, yeah. That's a wild quarterback competition, though.
If you're the social media director, the PR director for the Carolina Panthers, I do not envy you. At this point, I do envy anybody that will get to be a Golden State Warriors fan tonight, because the Warriors and the Nuggets, that is our game of the night over at WynnBET Sportsbook. Listen, there's 2 NBA games. We talked about one of them between Milwaukee and Chicago. That does not look to be particularly pretty. The Nuggets and the Warriors, though, to a certain extent, the Nuggets and the Warriors, Peter, I know that the first 2 games have been fairly ugly, but Denver has played tough at home. Now they go back to Golden State tonight. Line is Golden State -8.5. They're -450 on the money line. If you like the Nuggets to keep the series alive the way that Toronto did in Game 5, they're +350 with a total of 226.5. Before we dive into our favorite bets on this game, let's look from sort of a macro perspective on this game. Like what stands out? Golden State, enormous favorite yet again. And I know how you feel about the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, but to me, it just kind of feels like he's on a bit of an island, even if everybody else plays slightly better than what we expect them to play.
Yeah, this is not Nikola Jokic's fault that they're down 3-1. And I will say I'm so happy that the Raptors got 2 games from the Sixers, because if the Sixers had swept, you would have heard the clamoring, even though MVP voting's already done. Oh, Embiid's the MVP, Embiid's the MVP. The fact that the Nuggets won Game 4 and that Jokic also had 38 and 6 in Game 3, like, I mean, the dude is carrying this team to even stay competitive in these games. And you look at what happened in Game 4, and the difference is a couple role guys, we talked about one of them, Bones Highland, stepped up and they made some shots. And it's like, Yeah, like if Will Barton is your second leading scorer, but he shoots 5 for 15 like he did in game 2, you're not going to win the game. It's just that simple. This Warriors team is way too good offensively for the Nuggets to keep up if somebody doesn't play above their pay grade. And the Warriors have done a great job in this series of saying we're going to play Nikola Jokic straight up and like we'll let him score. And if that's the case, that's the case. And like we're going to make somebody else beat us. Well, the difference was in game 4 is they ended up getting Draymond Green to foul out. And so that for Denver is a big key because Draymond by far has been the best defender on Jokic, even though he's undersized. I mean, he's the best defender in the NBA. I know Marcus Smart won Defensive Player of the Year. Draymond Green is the best defender in the NBA, and I don't think it's particularly close, to be honest with you. So for me in this game, I can't like the Warriors deserve to be 8.5-point favorites just because they have the firepower. Like they lost that last game and Steph Curry shot like 8 for 22. So like if Steph has a good game, they're winning game 4 pretty easily. Jordan Poole also shot 3 for 10 in game 4. Like everything went Denver's way and they barely won that game. Like it was a 1-possession game with 30 seconds left. So I just can't see at Chase Center. Golden State crowd's going to be going crazy. I can't see the Warriors losing this game. Maybe they don't cover. Maybe Jokic is good enough to get the Nuggets, but I wouldn't bet it personally. I just think that the Nuggets, we talked about it all year. They don't have enough firepower. Like if they are one of the 5 worst teams in the NBA in net rating when Nikola Jokic is off the floor. That tells you all you need to know about if you should bet against this team against the best defense, the second best defense in the NBA with 3, legitimate 20 points per game scorers. It's too tough. I'm interested for your take though. I know that we talked about how this is kind of a tough game because Golden State's favored by so much.
Right. Yeah. 8.5, especially against a team like the Nuggets. It's not like the Bulls where 2 of their best players are hurt. And they're coming off back-to-back blowouts. Like Denver's coming off a meaningful win. And so I think that the line is adjusted because of it. Like it's 8.5 instead of 12.5. But the reality is in the postseason, Golden State Warriors have an offensive rating of 125.4. Okay. The number 2 team, the team that just kicked the Brooklyn Nets ass and sent them out in a sweep. And maybe that's not even fair because a lot of those games were close until Boston pulled away. But it's a full 6.2 points higher than the Boston Celtics. The Golden State Warriors, they're like in a complete class of their own when it comes to offensive rating. Conversely, on defense, Denver, dead last in the NBA in defensive rating over the course of the postseason. They are at 125.4. So it's an absolute mismatch, and I think the odds are reflective of it. If I had to choose a side, I'd probably go under if I'm going either side or total, just because I expect Golden State's defense at home, especially with Green starting to get back healthy. I think the intensity is just going to be there for this game, and I think they're going to basically say, all right, like Jokic, go at it, go have fun. Like even if he goes for 40, nobody else is going to be able to beat them. And at some point, Jokic is just going to completely run out of gas, which we saw in the early portion of the series. And I'm glad you brought up Draymond Green because that is actually my favorite bet for this game. I like him to hit his over on assists tonight at 7.5. It's at -120 over at WinBet. You mentioned he's the best defensive player in the NBA. I don't think there's any disagreement that between most fans when they watch Draymond play. Like it is already difficult enough to take on Jokic, but he does it as well as anybody in the league, despite a serious size advantage for Jokic. And you're right. The reason they lost game 4 is because he fouled out. He was off the floor. And I think the other component about Green too, and he's talked about this, he's already thrown some haymakers over the course of the postseason, talking about how there's plenty of players in the league that, just, they don't show up in the playoffs. If you're going to go ahead and make those comments, and again, he's got 3 rings to be able to back that up, you have to expect a monster performance the next day. And the best way that Green sets the tone for Golden State is as a distributor. Yes, on the defensive side of the ball, he's elite as well, but it's being able to find the right spots for Steph Curry, for Klay Thompson, now for Jordan Poole, who's starting to become an outstanding scoring option. Like Green is at his best when he is distributing the basketball and getting those guys open in space, running a little bit of pick and roll, pick and pop as well. I think this is going to be one of those games where he is distributing early. The assist numbers start to really pick up, and he's had a minimum of 6 in the games where he hasn't hit the over. The other 2 times it's been 9 and it's been 10. I think this is a tone-setting game for Draymond Green, and one of the best ways he can do that offensively is to rack him up early, get the ball to guys in space, and hit that assist prop. So I really like the over on his assist tonight.
Yeah, I think people like forget that this Warriors offense, like it is very heavily predicated on Steph Curry playing well, but it's also heavily predicated on Draymond Green kind of setting the stage for everybody because they play so well off the ball. Like I genuinely don't think there's a team I've watched in my lifetime that plays as well in terms of moving without the ball as the Warriors have over this run that they've had with Steph, Draymond, and Clay. Just because Steph and Clay command so much attention off the ball, it's impossible to guard them without, you have to either hedge on screens, you have to switch everything. And when you switch everything, somebody's going to get lost in translation. You get easy baskets. And Draymond Green is a fantastic facilitator at finding that. And I think another reason in this series why Golden State has done so well, and you kind of mentioned it, like their adjustments have been fantastic. Like Steve Kerr, and this is the difference with Denver can't make adjustments because they don't have the team. They don't have Jamal Murray. They don't have Michael Porter Jr. So they're kind of stuck with this is what we have, and like we got to make the best of it. Steve Kerr started Kevon Looney like every game this season. He basically hasn't played in this series because they don't like the matchup on Jokic. So it's allowed Draymond to play a small ball five, and you put Wiggins, Poole, Clay, and Steph around him, and you draw Jokic away from the basket, who's actually been a pretty good rim protector this year. He led the league in defensive box plus minus this year. So like he's been a good defender for them, but they've drawn him away from the basket. And when you have that, and we have all those guys moving off the ball, it's a absolute nightmare. So I love that for Draymond. When he gets to kind of just play that role at the top of the key where he's facilitating, it is very tough to stop when this team's on, especially at home. To stay with best bets, I will give my best bet because you mentioned a guy that I love. Jordan Poole might be my favorite player in these playoffs, and I'm a big Steph Curry guy, but Jordan Poole has kind of taken a little piece of that love in my heart for his game because this dude is legit. He scored 30, 29, and 27 points in the first 3 games of this series. Granted, 11-point game in game 4, shot 3 for 10. Did not have a good game. Still heavily involved. He had 9 assists. And this is what I love about Jordan Poole, I think, where he's matured over these last 3 years, is previously it was if he's not shooting well, you really had no reason for him being on the floor. Now he's a facilitator. He creates for others. He's creating his own shot, but he's creating for others. Obviously, the 9 assists in that game, I think that's just when you have him and Draymond and Steph and Clay, and they all are willing to share the ball, it is just impossible to defend this team. I love him to go over 19.5 points tonight. I think the volume shooting-wise will be back for him a little bit. He didn't get to the free throw line as much in game 4 as he was in the first couple games. And honestly, his number closed at 22.5 in game 4, already down to 19.5. That's a huge overreaction. I think he easily gets 20 tonight, especially at home. The Warriors might blow them out of the building, and that might mean overs for everybody tonight. You know what I mean? So love Jordan Poole, 20 points tonight.
Yeah, I think it's very viable. And the confidence, I think especially, is pretty eye-opening considering what he's been able to do in the postseason. So I'm certainly on that play as well, which leads us to our community bet of the night. The BetSided crew, the Daily Betslip viewers have weighed in. We have tallied the results, and it makes sense because Public Pete is on the show tonight that we will be taking on our personal bets. Put a wager on it because that's what we do on Daily Betslip. We ask you to weigh in. You help us out. I have it on my computer below. You got it on your phone.
Yes,
Golden State -8.5 is the bet tonight. They are going to be a very popular play against the Denver Nuggets. We'll go ahead and get that submitted right now. There we go. And it's locked in. And the Warriors -8.5. And we'll check back in. Community bets, by the way, 1-1 so far against the spread. Got off to a win when you were on with Ian on Monday with Boston +1. So went with the underdog there. Last night went with the underdog with New Orleans, which I had my reservations about, but this is a two-way street. We trust our community. So let's get back at it. Let's get back into the win column again tonight with Warriors -8.5. First time we're taking a favorite on the board, Peter, in our first 3 shows. You can get behind it?
Yeah, I can get behind it. I wouldn't have liked the alternative. Denver scares me. I feel like I could paint the picture of the Warriors winning in a blowout. I do not know if I can paint the picture of a Denver close game. As much as 8.5 is like I stayed away from this game originally. So yeah, I will take this side for sure.
Yeah, we'll go with it. I would have taken the under as well, and of course, Peter and I both shared our favorite prop bets for this game as well. I like the over on Draymond Green's assist number at 7.5. Peter likes the over on Jordan Poole's point total at 19.5. And that is the Daily Bet Slip for Wednesday. Appreciate all of you guys hanging out with us. Also, special shout out to Matt Verderame of BetSided for talking with us, giving us some good perspective heading into Thursday night's NFL draft. We'll be back tomorrow night for a brand new Daily Bet Slip. Ton of NFL draft coverage. We'll be reacting to a lot of the news. It'll be Ian McMillan and Donovan Smoot on the show tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern. Also, if you're looking for a deep dive when it comes to betting the NFL draft, if you're watching our show on YouTube right now, you can go ahead and find that video. It got posted a little bit earlier today in our live stream. And for those watching at BetSided, remember, you can just go to YouTube, search BetSided, and it'll be right there. You can find our page. You can become a subscriber and go ahead and check out all the content that we're doing each and every day, Monday through Sunday. Bet and breakfast on the weekends, the Daily Bet Slip Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Big thanks also to Joanne Stoner, our producer and director for today's show as well. We'll talk to you all soon. May all of your bets hit tonight, and enjoy all of the NBA basketball and Major League Baseball as well. Talk to you soon.